Welcome back, everybody. Today is Vice mock-up day, and I'm going to talk about a few other things. So as you already know, I finished flattening the bench top last night, and now it is time to get onto the vise, or the first vise anyway. In true fashion, I like to mock things up before I do them, and I probably overthink a lot of things, but as I wrote the quote down, sort of, as one of my subscribers had pointed out, more thinking usually means less doing, or worse, redoing, right? So, yeah, I'm a firm believer in that, especially when you're doing something for the very first time. I've never mounted a wood vise before. I've never built a bench like this before. So it's all new to me. I don't know all the ins and outs. Somebody like Paul Sellers, who has installed hundreds upon hundreds of vises on hundreds of benches that he's built throughout his 50-plus year career. He knows a thing or two about vise installs, right? That's not me. I don't hold that knowledge yet, that experience. So I'm utilizing a lot of experience from people like him and other people, the watchers out there that have put in a few vises and so forth. So I just wanted to kind of go over the mock-up that I have. I'm not going to be installing this weekend. I'm going to wait until next weekend. And I say this weekend, it's already Tuesday, but we had a long weekend, so this is the end of my long weekend. But I'm going to begin installing the vise this coming weekend. So before I get started with that, I did want to go over. I got my list again. See, I wanted to go over a few different vises and kind of talk about what I'm going to employ here and why and that kind of thing. Okay, so for the first, right, we have woodworking vises. Now, this is your typical woodworking vise. I think I'll get a better shot, see if the lighting gets a little better. I don't know. So it's your standard Wilton woodworking vise. I actually have two of these. This is a retracting dog that you can stick up to dog your work, which, as you'll see in a moment, on this bench will be kind of pointless. It's great that it's there, but it's going to be a moot point when I'm on my application of this bench, on this bench. So we have our standard woodworking vise right here, and I actually have two of these. One's going to be my main vise, and the other one's going to be a tail vise, which, if you didn't know, I was restoring it at work. I blasted most of the parts in the sandblast cabinet, and during disassembly, I was banging this pin through, and it didn't have a roll pin in it. It had just like an old school rivet, like a pin with a head. So I was banging that through, and I missed the casting, or I missed the pin and hit the casting, and it cracked this little T part right here. So I had to manufacture one that looked similar to it and functioned the same. So I machined one of those at work out of aluminum, just some scrap that we had in the scrap bin. And I milled it up, and all I have left to do with that is drill the hole and then pin it here, and then pin the ends of the handle back on. I've already got everything ready to go. I just have to do it. It's kind of tough too, because when I'm done with work, I want to get the hell out of there. The last thing I want to do is fire up a machine and go to work. But so you have this kind of vise, which I like. I would recommend this vise to anybody. If you're going to look, now this is a vintage vise. I went with a vintage vise on purpose. One, they're used. Well, they're proven for one. I like the vintage look, and if you get them on eBay, you can get them pretty cheap. If you're restoring them yourself, I think I picked up the tail vise that I was restoring at work. I think I picked it up for like $25, $30, something like that, if that. And this one cost me a little bit more because it was already fully restored. I didn't restore this one. But this is in much better condition than the one that I restored too. The screw and everything is in better condition. But they both function mechanically. They're both mechanically sound, and they function very smoothly. So I'm super stoked with both of these vices. If you want to go with a newer vise, Wilton and many other manufacturers out there make vises. If they made one back then, I don't know. Maybe they did, but I've never seen one. They make this is a 7-inch wide jaw, so it's a 7-inch vise, and they make 9-inch jaws, 9-inch vises as well with a 9-inch jaw. So it gives you a little bit more wider surface. For me, it really isn't going to matter too much how wide this is, because as you can see from this, these are going to be, this piece of lumber right here is going to be, this is, I think, curly maple. I haven't really, or like a quilted maple. There's no way, or some people call it fiddleback. I don't know. It's a very strange type of maple, but it's got figure in it, and I think the figure will actually add to the strength. You know, it's a good hardwood. I mean, they're just, I say they're just vice chops, but they are just vice chops. But whatever, that's what I'm going to use. So I haven't decided yet which, I have decided which way I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it with the grain going this way. I thought about going this way, but I have a different solution for that. Because the chop is going to stick up like 2 1/4 inches taller than this vise when it's mounted underneath the bench. And I want that depth in my vise for obvious reasons, but it presents the problem. Now this is a very thick chop. I mean, the chop itself is, now this is rough cut, so when it's milled it'll be skinnier, but right now it's at 2.5 inches thick. So it'll probably be, I don't know, 2 1/4 inches or something like that when it's all said and done. And then I'm going to cut them. They'll end up being roughly 6 1/4 inches deep, tall, and they're going to be 11 inches wide. Why 11 inches? Only because my board is almost 22 inches. Once I cut the ends off, it'll be 22 inches long. So you cut that in half, and you got, well, 11 inches. So it'll be 11 inches. I'll have 2 inches of overhang on either side. That'll give me a nice, a nice wide surface to work with. And Sorry, I'm thinking about other things while I'm videoing. That's not very polite, but whatever. So they do make wider vices, taller vices, bigger vices, vices that swivel 180 out. You have like a woodworking vise and then a metal vise. They make all kinds of vices, corner vices, the kind that clamp to your bench. All kinds are out there. So just kind of search, know what you want to do with your vise, and search for a vise that fits that need or that purpose. Well, this fits my needs and my purpose, so I got 2 of them. And there'll be 2 chops made out of that. And one will be for this side, and one will be for the other side. I have some other maple, which is not quite as thick, that I'm going to use separately, and you'll see that in a minute. Some other vices, right? Some of you might recognize this, some not. This mounts to whatever piece of wood I want, which I can mount this to a chunk of lumber, and then mount that lumber into one of my vices. And what this does, this vise, is it's for sharpening saws. So you would stick your saw in there. It's got a nice deep throat. Yeah, I said deep throat. But it's got a nice deep throat, and it can it allows you to get to clamp down really close to your teeth. And it has a bevel on there, so you're not running into it with your file. So that's what this is, and it also has, it comes out like right here. So it allows you to get over your handle like that, right? Really super nice feature. If you've ever sharpened saws, I've done a few saws, and not a ton, but I've sharpened a few saws, and this sucker is really nice. The other good feature about this type of vise is, you can't really, well, yeah, you can. It's got a spherical or a ball joint. So you loosen that up, right? It's clamped to your table. You work on it like this, and then, you can move it around in any direction that you want. It just hinges in that ball. You can move it this way, back and forth, side to side, swivel it. However you want to do it. It comes in really, really nice. And these things aren't that expensive, really. Again, it's, do you buy it already rehabbed, or do you buy one nice and rusty and restore it yourself? Next is a good little, now this is I think they're 3.5-inch jaws. It's a little metal vise. I mean, even though this is a woodworking bench, a good solid metal working bench vise is, it even has a little anvil on it. Is priceless. I mean, I'm going to be doing more than just woodwork on this bench, so I needed something that I could, so that I can work metal objects. If I have to, chuck up or a piece of flat stock and hacksaw it in half, or a chunk off of it, or make a pen, or whatever I need to do with metal, I can use that. And what I'll basically end up doing is basically cutting a section about this big out of a piece of 2x6 or something, or 2x8, whatever it is, and mount it to that, and then I'll cut another section of that and rabbet it into the bottom of this base. That way I can take that and mount it into this woodworking vise, and I can kind of, you know, it's portable. I can stick it in either vise that I want and go to town. That way I don't have to permanently mount it and have those holes and everything barring up my pitch top. So those are the vices and everything, and I have one other thing that's down below the bench, which is nothing but that will be added to the bench. I don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out. It's a light, a big light, because you can't have enough light, and I want light where I want it, not just, you know, where I'm stuck with it. So, next thing I wanted to talk about was vise location and considerations, right? So, there's a lot of things that go, yeah, you can just cut a hole in the side of your apron, shove it through, clamp it, mount it with some lag screws, and be done with it. And have a vise, great. And then you'll kick yourself in the ass a week or two or a month or a year later when you need to do something and you realize you screwed up and you should have put it over here, should have put it over there, or should have had this consideration or that consideration, right? So the things that I'm considering, right? First thing, does it go inside? Right, so my leg is right here. Does it go inside the leg, or does it go outside the leg? So if I go outside, and I've done a lot of research, and I'll post a link to Paul Sellers' blog on this very thing, because he points out a great, he points out the very conflict that I was having is inside or outside, and also flush or not flush, right? And he gives two great answers to both questions. The back jaw being flush is what I mean, or leaving it stuck out, mounting it on the outside of the apron on purpose, right? So when we're talking about location, there's a couple different things. If I go on the outside, I have no support over here. I have no support over here on the other end of the bench. Now, if I go here, I'm in between both legs. I'm in between both legs, and I have good support for if I wanted to put something in the vise and actually chop within it, which I don't know if I'll ever do that, but I want that option. I want to be able to chop inside my vise if I want to. So, inside or outside. Or if I'm banging on a piece of metal, I have my metal vise in there and I'm banging on a piece of metal, I don't want it, I want it as rigid as possible, right? So, if I go inside, yes, I'm rigid between the two legs, but I have to, it poses two problems, right? For one, if you're building a bench like this or similar to it, then you are dealing with a wedge right here, right? So the wedge comes up, and it comes up, to about right here. So when I go to mount, I have to offset it from the leg about 2 or 3 inches, right? And then go, so now I'm even closer to the center of the bench, and which brings me to my second problem. If you mount it, and this was pointed out by my buddy Roger, the closer to the center you mount it, he's like, think about it. The majority of the work that you're going to be doing, you're going to be wanting to do right here in the center of your table. Any assembly or just working on something, whatever you're doing, it's going to be, when you're not in the vise, it's going to be right here in the center. You don't want to be forced to work on the outer edge of your bench just because your vise is right here. And plus, if it's right there, you know, you don't want to be knocking the jewels around with the handles and such. So keep that in mind. You got the wedge, and then, you know, how is it? Because if it's right here and I'm right here, you know, it's right up in my business, right up in my way. If I mount it to the outside, I'm dealing with possibly not having as rigid a setup as I have over here because I don't have that extra, I don't have any support over here on this end. Now I can solve that with two problems, or solve that that problem with a couple of different ways. First off, I don't think that well, Paul had alludes to there being more spring in the bench, like very noticeable spring or less rigidity in this side of the table of the bench top than this side. Which I took a mallet to the bench, just beating on the bench, and although I did feel a slight difference, it wasn't enough really to warrant sweating whether I was on the right side or the left side of the bench. But I wasn't wailing on it or anything like that. Now, if I wanted to, if I want to put it out here on the outer edge, and I feel over time that, hey, there's not enough support here for chopping, and whatnot, then I can put perhaps like a removable leg, like cut away a little section right up in here and kind of half lap a 4x4 to where it insets in there, a little bit shorter than the half lap, and then drive a wedge in there to kind of, you know, lower it to the ground and make that nice and sturdy, or do the wedge from the bottom, even from the floor, or a couple of wedges would probably be better. To give that solid all the way to the ground support on both sides of the vise. I like having it outside because it gets it away from my work surface, and it puts it closer to the end, and it's just kind of, that's where I want it. I want it on the outside, not on the inside. So a third leg may be something I'm thinking about. Now, keep in mind that Paul Sellers' bench is only, what, 2.5 inches thick, something like that. 3 inches thick, maybe even 3.5. Well, I don't care. My bench is 4.5. It ended up being 4.5, about 4.5 inches thick. Well, this is much thicker than Paul's by more than an inch. Which adds a lot of rigidity. Now, he's only got his sitting in, like, his leg is only in like 9 inches from the end. Mine is double that at 18 inches. So my legs are inset by 18 inches. So that if I'm sitting there, I have plenty of room to get my legs up underneath there. If that's what I want to do on either side. It'll mostly be on the other side. So that's that. And so then I start thinking, okay, if I put a leg there, now I'm kind of, granted it'd be removable, but now I'm left with having to occupy a space right here, like having to leave this void, this section right here void, for a third leg, possibly. Now this all hinges on whether or not I think it's going to be rigid after playing with it for a few months. But right here, if you look at Paul Sellers' blogs, he has a set of drawers in between his aprons. There's like 2 or 3 drawers he has. They're only a couple inches thick or tall. But that would be amazing to have drawer storage right here. Even if I built out a short, I don't know what you'd call it, some kind of a support coming from the top and from the leg or from the apron, to be able to put drawer guides on, or some kind of wooden slider that I can slide the drawers in and out, make a few drawers and have storage right there, right? Well, I can't. It's limiting me what I can do with that with the if I have a leg there. So just something to think about. Along with storage, I've thought about also having a very long or very deep drawer. Right now I have some extra lumber down underneath, so that's not really a shelf. But making a good 8-inch deep drawer right here, just have some wooden runners on the top and bottom. The drawer will slide in between, and that would be that. That would be awesome to have a huge deep drawer right here, or maybe even 2. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but storage is definitely something that I do plan on doing, which means I have to plan for it, right? So where am I going to do it? If I put the vise on the inside, I have those other considerations to mess with here. If I put it on the outside, I have those considerations to mess with over here. If I put it on the outside, I could possibly put some drawers on this, like down here, and just limit it to the rear side of the bench. I could put some 18-inch deep drawers here, but it would only be here because my vise, screw, and thread guide rods are going to take up a good section of this side of the apron, or this side of the bench underneath. So no drawers there. Okay, and that's about all I wanted to talk about as far as the different vices and location and stuff like that. Okay, so there's 2 last things. I wanted to kind of discuss how I'm going to mount it and where I've decided to mount it and why. Because I have made the decisions. I'm just not going to work on it until next weekend. So, I have decided to mount. I was going to go back and forth because in my last video I said that, hey, it's going to be mounted right here. And then I'm like, yeah, I read Paul's blog and was like, maybe I should mount it here. And then it came into this whole, well, what about this and what about that? All considerations taken in, accounted for. I'm mounting it right here on the outside of my leg. It gives me all the space, all the real estate over here to mess with without having to worry about my vise. My vise is right there where I want it, when I want it. And it doesn't, if I need a third leg, I add the third leg. I don't think I'm going to need it because of the thickness and beefiness of my tops. But if I need the third leg, I add a third leg. I make a removable, elegant solution, and and I run with it like that, and then I just build supports outside of that for any drawer storage that I want underneath the bench. Okay, so that's where I want to mount it, and I kind of wanted to go over the mock-up. I don't know how well this is going to turn out because I'm on my computer, and I tried to mark it the best I could so you could try to understand what orientation I'm looking at. So I can't point at anything because I'm holding the computer with both my hands, but the big square block there is just a piece to give you reference. Like that would be an example of a piece that I've got mounted in the vise as if it were already installed. So I wrote on there, so hopefully you can see kind of what I'm looking at or what I'm envisioning. And here's a peek from what it would look like from the side, sort of. All the mock-up pieces are not exactly to size, so they're taller and shorter and longer and thicker and whatnot, but this is what it will kind of look like, and I don't know if I'm getting it good or not because I can't see it, but hopefully you get the idea, right? And so this would be like my outer movable jaws chop. This will be the one. I'm going with a chop. It's kind of, you're like, why are you mounting it recessed behind the apron and then putting another chop up there? Doesn't make any sense, right? Well, I'll explain that in a second. So here's the rear chop, which goes flush up against the apron, and then as you can see up under here, that's where the vise will get mounted, the back of the vise, and then obviously it gets screwed, lag screwed up into the bench. Imagine the rest of the bench being here. So hopefully that wasn't too terrible. It's going to be funny looking at that as I redo this, as I look at this video. But that is the mock-up. Now these jaws are going to be different. I'm going to have thicker jaws. I'm going to have an inch and a half, approximately inch and a half thick removable rear chop. That way, if I want the flush, if I want the entire apron as my rear chop, which I probably will, because I'm going to be working on larger timbers here, and I'll have holes drilled throughout my apron with holdfasts that can hold the other end flush to the apron, but there's going to be 90% of the time, I agree 100% with Paul that if I go to put a piece of wood in here, look at where my fingers are. Well, does it help if you could see my fingers? But look at where my fingers are, right? If I'm putting a piece of lumber into my vise, I don't want to have to hold it out here like this because my fingers are going to get pinched in here and try and hold it out here and hold it with my foot or whatever and tighten it down. Where if it's like this where I have an inch and a half removable chop that puts my vise an inch and a half out, then I can get down, I can go down under in between there and hold it and tighten it down, or vice versa, all right? Plus, it gives me room. If if I've got a piece chucked up in the vise and it's all nice and tight, and I'm like sawing, I'd be over here, I'm sawing through it, and I keep moving it up and moving it up, the last little bit of cutting is going to chop right into my bench unless I have that gap there. So that gap will save my bench. Yeah, I could cut little corners out and put little insets or whatever on either side of the vise, but you don't need it if you have a gap, really. Okay, so that's that. As far as why I'm putting that chop there and making it removable, so now I have the best of both worlds. I can have it set away, be able to get my hands under there, and then I can also remove it if I want to use the entire apron and I want to be flush, or maybe I need a little bit more room, because that's going to hog up an 1.5 inches of room, right? It's going to hog up 1.5 inches of room in how far the vise will open up and how much room I'm going to have in between the jaws. So if I need that little extra room, maybe I throw a slimmer removable jaw on, maybe I take this one off, maybe both, I don't know. Maybe at that point, if I start getting wider than that, then I employ my dogging system, and I'll use the dogging system to hold the work. Which brings me to my next and final point, is that, remember I said, well, that this is going to be my chop. It's nice and thick, and I guess you can see the figure in it a little bit. It's got a figure different ways too. It's kind of weird. I've never seen maple like this before, but I'm sure it's pretty common. I would imagine, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean anything. Now these are right around, I think, 1.25 inches or so. So I may end up going a little bit thicker. These are. So this is around 1.25 inches. This is 1.25 inches oak dowel. Not bad for grain. A little tight, but a little not so great. Anyway, I am going to be using this. Now, granted, I'm only going to be to right here, right? So about 1 inch in, I'm going to, about 1.5 inches in, I'm going to be putting, I haven't decided whether I'm going to go square or round, but I'm going to be putting 2 dogs in there, and they're going to be this size or a little bit bigger, but they're going to be long, not this long. They don't need to be this long, but let's just say I'm kind of leaning toward the square. I like the square, but that's going to be hell trying to chop a mortise that long, a small mortise that long. Trying to clean it up for it anyway. But anyway, so if I go with something like this, then it'll go up through. I want it to be able to come up past the dog at least, I'm thinking 8 to 10 inches. I think 10 inches will be fine. So right there, now the bench top would be up here in relation to this. So I want to be able to hold like a big bowl blank in between some, a massive bowl blank or something in between this, because I want to have 2 dogs the same distance apart running down the bench here all the way to the other side. So I want to be able to hold here between these 4 points, or maybe 5 points, I don't know yet, but I want to be able to hold this large chunk of wood, or maybe it's a big 10-inch or 5-inch slab that I'm working on for whatever. I want to be able to hold it, so I want it sticking. I want it to be able to stick up real tall and still have a good, good rigidity. And so if it's sticking up that tall, 9 or 10 inches or so, then if I go down a hair, well, if I go to what would be, I mean, you're talking dogs that are like that long, right? So maybe 16 inches or so. And I can push those down into the bench when I don't need them, and then just kind of reach and pop them up however tall I want them to be, and work with it from there. The second thing that does is because as I'm using this, remember it's going to be sticking up 2 1/4 inches past the top of the vise. So with the grain running this way, now granted this is going to be a good 2 1/4 thick or so when it's all said and done, but there's always that point. If I'm chucking up on something that's only taking up the, say, the first 1/2 inch of the jaws, then if I put enough pressure on that, which I don't think I ever will, but if I was to put enough pressure on that, it could snap the top of that off. But with something like this, or the dowel where the grain is running lengthwise as well through it, going all the way through the chop, now I have vertical support. I may even put another one in there. Maybe I'll put a round one in there just for the support. Probably don't need it, but there we go. One more long video, just what you all wanted. So that's it. If you have any suggestions, I have 3 days in between now and the time I start this build, or start the vise install, and hopefully I'll bring the second vise home with me. I'll be done with it, and I bring the second vise home, and maybe we'll be installing 2 vises this weekend. And I guess after that would be drilling all the dog holes and making some dogs and all that kind of fun stuff. I don't know if I'm that ambitious to get all of it done. I do have a little bit of a life and other things going on, but that's where I stand, and that's what those are all the considerations and things that I'm thinking about doing. So, like I said, it's going to be 3 days from now until I start building this. So if you have any epiphanies, or if you have any ideas or suggestions for me to that may improve the situation, or some other considerations like, hey man, you're forgetting all about X, Y, or Z, right? Let me know. Let me know within the next 3 days. Hopefully you see it before then. If you're a genius and you see something that I'm leaving out. But yeah, hook a brother up. Let me know what I'm not thinking about, because I don't know what I'm not thinking about. I think I've got it all covered, but you never know. So if you're thinking of something and I'm not, let me know. If I helped you in considering where to mount your vise, or whether to go flush or not flush, or do some kind of or maybe you're going to employ what I'm doing. I wanted it, and I don't know yet how I'm going to fix this removable jaw. I could just put screws in it, and that would be fine, but I'm also looking at like an easy slide-in dowel job, or maybe some I really don't want the bolt heads shown on the outside of on the face of the removable jaw. So I'm trying to figure out a way I could just dowel it or something like that. It's going to be interesting. I'll think of something though, and well, you'll know exactly what I come up with when I come up with it and I actually do the install. So if you have any ideas for that, how would you mount, a quarter of this, because it'll only be like that, well, half of it wide and not so tall. How would you mount that to the rear of the bench without showing any, without recessing and showing, or counterboring and showing a bolt head on this face as it sits? How would you do that? So let me know. But if I helped you out in any way, let me know. Let me know I'm doing something good and somebody else is learning something. If you're digging what I'm doing, thumbs up. If you hate what I'm doing, you think I suck, thumbs down. It's your prerogative. Well, if you've been watching this long, you're probably not going to give me a thumbs down. Because for one reason, maybe I'm helping you out, or maybe you're a lot like me and you're doing what I'm, you kind of live life the way I do or whatever. But leave me a comment, subscribe. Friends and family, I love you. Everybody else, I'll see you in 3 days.